Good morning, Mario.
Morning.
Good morning, Easton.
Good morning.
Good morning, Zion. right. Torrance here. Alejandro's here. Ashley and Vincent. And Zion. And my phone's going off. Haley. Oh, somebody's trying to get into my Facebook. Why? I don't know. Like, there's nothing there. Okay, we're going to wait just a couple more minutes to see if we pick up a few more people because today's a big day. And then we'll get started. How's everybody doing? You doing okay? Yes, no, sort of so. So if you can hear me, let's go ahead and pop our cameras on really quick just so I can see you. I know that you're actually here. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you have to turn them off over the course of the class in order to hear me better, that's fine. I just want to be able to see you at the beginning so that I know that you're really here. Okay, thank you. So everybody, I see everybody's faces. Wonderful. Okay, so today we are talking about ancient Rome. Hooray. And oh, we've got Ulysses here now. Sorry, let me bring up my chat and my thing again. So one of the things that you're going to see that's going to be really different about the Roman stage as opposed to what we saw in ancient Greece is that we are going to get some live, real murder. Some real murder. I've got a stranger. Message them. Yeah, someone's going to actually die. We're going to get some actual death. So, ancient Rome. So, the other big thing about ancient Rome as opposed to ancient Greece is that Rome, tragedy and comedy and theater were not like the most popular forms of entertainment in Rome like they were in ancient Greece, right? In ancient Greece, especially in the golden age of drama, as we discussed, you know, they considered tragedy to be part of the learning experience. It was part of their civic duty to go. They were supposed to be there to become better citizens, right? So we have some other options in Rome. The top two that you may have heard of before is the Circus Maximum and the Colosseum. Does anybody know anything about either of those two places? What they would do there? Tell me what you know.
Perform?
Right, but what does anybody? Okay, Easton says he knows about the Colosseum. Tell me about the Colosseum, Easton. What would happen there? Yep, Torn knows too.
Well, I think it was like gladiator battles and shows and things like that.
Yeah.
Ancient Greek shenanigans.
Ancient Roman shenanigans. So, yes, the Colosseum was where the gladiator battles were, right? They also would stage reenactments of historical battles because, who doesn't want to watch that? There's some evidence that maybe even some maritime battles would occur. I don't know who this person is, and I do not want to admit them. So the Colosseum, they would have all sorts of fights there, gladiators, or especially in early Roman times, maybe have like a few Christians fight a lion, right? So that's the one that a lot of people know about. And parts of the Colosseum are still standing today, right? So you can go see the ruins of the Colosseum. The Circus Maximum was an area that basically was for equestrian performances. So I have a little video on that for you to watch. Let me make sure that my volume is on. There we go. All right.
The Circus Maximus is a valley located between two hills, the Palatine Hill and the Aventine Hill. And Roman tradition takes its use back all the way to the time of Romulus. It is here that he has a plot to basically increase the population of his early city of Rome. He invites people from neighboring villages, and at the time of a religious festival, he tells his other fellow Romans, go out and grab a girl. And this is the famous rape of the Sabine women, and this is how Rome gets its start. In the regal period, it's the Tarquin kings that are credited with using that space, that big open valley, for horse racing, chariot racing. And over time, people go from sitting on the slopes of the hills to sitting in wooden bleachers that over time become made into stone. And by the time we get to the reign of Trajan, the Circus Maximus is the greatest venue of all time. It holds up to 200,000 spectators, and there was nothing like it. The dimensions of the Circus Maximus in the imperial period is staggering. Starting blocks are located over toward the Forum Boarium, and the chariot racing would take place usually 7 laps going around this track. How long was the Circus Maximus? 545 meters long and about 80 meters wide. So it was a massive construction. And in the center, you race around the Spina. It was filled with temples and shrines, and ultimately there are 2 enormous obelisks. The Emperor Augustus brings the first one with the conquest of Egypt. It is now in the Piazza del Popolo. Constantius II brings the last obelisk from Egypt into the city of Rome. This is in 357 and is now in front of St. John Lateran. Famously, it's here that you have the Fire of 64, the Great Fire of Nero that destroys 3/4 of the city, breaking out. How did this take place? Well, we're told it's a very hot, dry summer. And of course, what you have near the stands, you have the stalls, you have the paddocks, you have the places where the animals are stored, you have lots of straw. And that's a great place for a fire to break out. And of course, from there it spreads and destroys 3/4 of the city. And it devastates the population, it devastates Rome, but the Emperor Nero rebuilds. The chariot racing was the main event, and you had charioteers going around being pulled by 2-horse chariots, 4-horse chariots, 6, 8, even 10. It was a great spectacle. And that was the only thing that was going on in the Circus Maximus. The other great thing that takes place is venationes, or hunts. So you had, on the occasion of events, festivals honoring various gods, the ludi, you would then bring out exotic animals from all over the empire, and you would have them hunted and killed. You could go from deer and boar from Italy, all the way to exotic animals like panthers, lions, tigers, rhinos, giraffes, everything to excite a great audience that wanted a great spectacle.
Okay, yeah, so he mentions chariot races, right? He mentions the hunts that they would do, right? He mentions it's the site of the Great Fire. It starts the Great Fire that basically burned the majority of the city of Rome at one point, okay? And it's at 200,000 people. I don't even know if we have something that sits 200,000 people. Is there like a capacity? Let me see. The Tiger Stadium seats 100,000 people. I've been there before, but that's like half, right? So huge, right? Coliseum's huge. The Circus Maximus is huge. So a lot of people are going to these things, right? So while drama is still important to the ancient Romans, it's not as important as it was to the ancient Greeks. Okay, that's pretty clear. Okay, but when they were going to see the theater, they're going to see comedy. Comedy was much more preferred and more popular in ancient Rome than it was in ancient Greece. Okay. So we have two comedian playwrights that we're going to talk about. And the first is a man named Plautus. All right. So Plautus writes comedy that is based on Greek old comedy. And if you remember, I mentioned that the originals for Greek old comedy were lost, right? So he is writing about domestic situations and romantic situations, okay? His comedies are about, people in love and the funny things that happen to them, funny things that happen to just everyday people. And in order to sort of write these plays, he's going to use stock characters. Does anybody remember, or we talked about it a little bit, what stock characters are? Do something really quick.
Side.
I can see how you would think that. What we're talking about is characters that are very static, right? They not really much changes for them from start to finish. They are they want one thing and that's what they're going for. So they don't change over the course of the play. They don't really like learn a lesson most of the time. They're just sort of goofy one-note characters. If you are familiar at all with, like a stereotype, yes, that's totally right, Torin. If you know anything about Friends, Joey and Phoebe are kind of like stock characters in the sense that like they always are sort of like dealing with fairly similar. Phoebe might change a little bit, right? And Joey does too, like in but like the first seasons, right? They're very like simple characters. They're, they're stereotypes. Okay. So that's the kind of comedy that Plautus is writing. So all of his plays, if you compare like two of his plays, you'll see that a lot of the characters sort of match up one for one. So at this time, if you were a professional actor, you would sort of get cast and like you would only play like the young lover, and that would be your role. I should also mention that we're still dealing with characters using masks, and we're still dealing with all male actors. However, we're not really dealing with a chorus as much anymore. I mean, there is a chorus, but it's not super important now. So that's Plautus. He's writing comedies. What else about his comedies? Well, they are, like I said, based on Greek New Comedy. We have 20 of his plays. So what did he do? He took Greek New Comedy and changed it a little bit, put his name on it, pretty much the end. So he changed it by adding some Roman references, right? Maybe changed the names. He added Latin dialogue. So from Greek dialogue to Latin dialogue. He played around with the poetic meter. So what does that mean? Does anybody remember what poetic meter is?
The seriousness?
Sort of. It's about like the way that the play sounds. So the primary thing that he does is almost all of his plays are sung. So remember how music was kind of like low down on the thing for Aristotle, and they would have like choral odes and then dialogue. Most of his plays are sung from start to finish. And he also added jokes, more jokes. But a big thing that he did was put in a lot of slapstick comedy. Does anybody know what slapstick comedy is?
Bland?
Sorry?
Wait, no, not bland. What's it called? I know what a slapstick is, but new?
No. Dark humor? No. Go ahead, Torin.
It's like when you like put your hands on people, not like that, but like when you like hit somebody like the Three Stooges.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, the Three Stooges is a perfect example of slapstick, right? Where they're like pretending to poke each other's eyes out and throwing pies in each other's face. They weren't throwing pies in each other's face, but that's like the idea, right? There's a lot, it's very physical, right? Yeah, perfect. Good job, Torin. Yeah, it's the Three Stooges took the concept of slapstick humor and sort of like redid it for a new age, right? But yeah, very physicalized, like throwing people about, all that fun stuff. Okay. Also think about like Looney Tunes, where there's like a lot of stuff happening, but nobody ever really gets hurt, right? So that's what we're talking about. Good. Right. And then, like I said, his stuff is meant to be sung. So lots and lots and lots of music, and the lines are being sung instead of spoken. Questions so far? We good? Okay, so let's go in a little bit further to stock characters, okay? So they're really broad characters that don't have a lot of depth. Like I said, categories would be like young male lover, young female lover, witty student, like cranky old man, the like jokester. They're very black and white. If there's a bad guy, it's very obvious that he's the bad guy. And when we get to Italian comedy, when we talk about commedia, you're going to see this in a big way, because commedia not only does that, but they have specific masks. So you can tell just by looking at the mask of a character who that character type is, right? but very black and white characters. You know, they're either good or they're bad. They're written to be funny. They're usually like there's one thing that they want and they're gonna get it. Like the young lovers, they're in love, and it's usually like they want to get married, and then all this stuff happens to try to stop them from getting married. But at the end, hooray, they get married, right? Any questions about stock characters? Make sense? So it's called stock because it's kind of like if you imagine you just like take the ones that you want and to put the play together, right? It's like, okay, to write this plot, I need a pair of young lovers and I need a cranky old man who's like her dad who's trying to stop them. And then I need like a witty servant who's going to help. And then that's what my play is really like based around, right? All right. So then the other person that we have who's writing comedy is Terrence. And he has a totally different approach to comedy. So he's going to write literary comic plays that aren't as exaggerated as Plautus's. His dialogue is meant to be spoken. And it's really about like wordplay, right? Witty. It's not about like people throwing each other around and running around on stage. It's more about verbal humor. So some pretty big differences between the two just at a glance. So what else about Terrence? Well, Terrence has a very interesting backstory. He was born in Carthage, and he actually came to Rome as a child as a slave. And he was a slave to one of the Roman senators who had him educated and then ended up freeing him. He wrote 6 plays, and we have all of them. And his plays were he would take a bunch of different Greek plays and kind of combine them, and he used Greek characters. So remember, we sort of said that Plautus would like add a bunch of Roman stuff. Terrence doesn't really do that. He keeps a lot of it as the Greek characters and the Greek names. But yeah, very interesting backstory with him. And I think the video we're going to watch talks about him a little bit more too. He's an interesting guy. So we've talked about Plautus. We've talked about Terrence. Any questions about Terrence? No? Okay, let's talk about the other form of entertainment that sort of relates to theater, okay? Let's talk about mime. Tell me in the chat what comes to mind when you hear that. Mime. What do you think about? An old French lady, okay. The guy that dresses in black and white clothes, okay. French, mute, silent people who know how to act. Okay, a person who doesn't say anything. suspenders. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to add? Okay, so it's very different. Roman mime is completely different than what we think of as miming today. Okay. So it was actually spoken. It could be, oh, Giselle said a person that moves but doesn't talk. Okay. Yeah, this is Roman mime. It's actually spoken. It could be serious or it could be comic. And this is where we have female actors. All right. They also do not wear masks. And a lot of these miming plays featured violence and or sexual content. And as a result, and because of the fact that it scoffed at Christianity, it made a lot of fun of early Christians, right? It was not something that the Christian church, the early Christian church, was very excited about. They were not a big fan of it. Because you have to remember, at this time, the Roman Empire is not affiliated with the Christian church yet, right? That comes a little later. So totally different than what we normally think of with mime, right? Totally different. So female actors, no masks. It's violent. It has references to sexual content. Makes fun of the Christian church. Very, very different than what we normally think about today. Okay. Now we do have tragedy in ancient Rome, but it is not as popular of a form of entertainment. And it's also going to be quite a bit different from what we talked about in ancient Greece. Okay. And the number one tragedian that we have in ancient Rome is a man named Seneca. Okay. So here's some key differences. Number one, Seneca's chorus was not super important to the plot, right? Think about ancient Greek choruses, right? Like Oedipus Rex, where the chorus is like the citizens of the city, you know, and they talk to the chorus a lot. That doesn't happen in Seneca's plays. We also see violence on stage. Now, some of this seems so extreme that we don't know for sure if his plays were actually done. So, for instance, with Oedipus, the idea would be, and you would see it, would they really stage a play where a character had to for real gouge their eyes out? Right? There's a possibility that maybe they would have made somebody, just like they did in the Colosseum, like come out as Oedipus and gouge their eyes out. Right? We don't know. We do know, though, that his plays, when they were rediscovered, were very influential on tragedians in the Elizabethan period, right? During the neoclassical period and before, things like Macbeth. That's very influenced by Seneca. Is it Titus Andronicus? I mean, Titus Andronicus has some really, I think it's Titus Andronicus, which is about a Roman general, right? Has some like really, really gruesome stuff. So for instance, Titus's sons are beheaded. His daughter is raped and they cut off her hands and her tongue so she can't identify who did it. He feeds like the bodies of kids to their parents. So, yikes. Okay. So we don't know for sure if it was actually done. But if it was pretty gruesome, right? A few other things. Seneca's plays are 5 episodes or acts divided by choral odes. Remember this because it's going to come back for neoclassicism where they make it a rule that plays must be 5 acts. He has lots and lots of elaborate speeches that include messages about morality, right? What it means to be a good person or a bad person. If they were staged, it's very possible and likely that the violence was done on stage, right? Which is very different from ancient Greece, where they would just talk about off-stage violence. And his characters were all sort of obsessed with something, a singular passion that really drives them in each play. So much different, right, than the tragedy of ancient Greece. Very different. Anybody have any questions about it or comments or anything I can answer for you or try to answer? I'll admit that the works of Seneca aren't really like in my wheelhouse. So sometimes I have to like look things up just like you would. No, we good? This makes sense. You see how it's a lot different, right? Are we going to go over these eventually? What do you mean, Mario? You're talking about the plays or? Okay, yeah. Actually, that's going to be at the end when I give you your assignment. So, okay. So then remember with Greek tragedy, we had Aristotle. Now we have Horace. And Horace is going to sort of expand on some rules for ancient Roman plays. The first thing that he's going to do is say that tragedy and comedy should be distinct genres, so that tragedy should not have any comedic parts and comedy shouldn't have any tragic parts, right? He's also going to say that tragedy should deal with royalty or people of high social standing, whereas comedy should deal with common people, right? Because we don't want to encourage our audience members to laugh at the upper class. So comedy's about the lower class, tragedy's about royalty, and that drama should entertain but also teach a lesson, which is kind of what Aristotle said, right? So he expands on the things that Aristotle had to say. And this plus the stuff that Aristotle said will be combined in neoclassicism to come up with all sorts of fun stuff. All right. Any questions about Horace? Pretty clear on this stuff, right? He's just like expanding on what Aristotle talked about. So we're going to watch a little video and then I'm going to give you guys an assignment, okay? So let's Let me get out of this and then give you the link just in case, because I know that it's been acting up.
Get closer.
Here we go. So there's the link for the YouTube.
Let's do this.
And just in case it's easier for you to watch it without interference from Zoom. And if you need to turn off your camera to be able to see better, go ahead.
This is Crash Course Theater, and today we'll be looking at the surviving literature of Roman drama, because Roman life wasn't all naval battles, naked miming prostitutes, and Christians being eaten by lions. Sometimes you had to take a break and go watch a play. Much like Roman deities, the most popular form of Roman drama were comedies that borrow heavily from Greek originals, especially the comedies of Menander, with a little bit of Attilan farce thrown into the mix. These comedies are called fabulae palliatae. They have outdoor, urban settings and are filled with stock characters. The hero of the play is typically a type known as the adulas case, a young man who is in love with the girl next door, the Virgo, whom he can't marry because she's of dubious parentage, or he's in love with a prostitute, the Moratrix. Then there's the Senex, usually the father or the old man, who's either a strict miser or a louche skirt chaser. Other characters are the Servus, the wily slave, the Leno, the pimp, the Miles Gloriosus, the bragging soldier, and the Parasite, a slave character who sponges off of his master. Sometimes wives and maidservants appear too. These stock characters get themselves involved in stock plots, often a couple plots per play. Typical ones involve thwarted lovers, disagreement between parent and child, and mistaken identity, which is way easier to pull off when everyone is wearing masks. Sometimes there's a direct address to the audience too, kind of like a parabasis, and almost always there's a happy ending, at least for the lovers. Comedies with happy endings are Yorick's faves. He is a man of infinite jest, after all. Oh, sorry. Was a man of infinite jest. In the Roman plays, most of the people and settings have Greek names, which is either a hat tip to the original source or a real failure of imagination on the part of these writers. But even though the setting is ostensibly Greek, the situations and jokes about current events and even the street names are definitely Roman, especially in the works of Plautus. Plautus and Terence are the two guys we're going to be talking the most about. Why them? Well, partially because they were the greatest practitioners of Roman comedy, but also because, you guessed it, their plays survived. Titus Macius Plautus was born in 254 BCE in Umbria, a landlocked region with a lot of truffles. Legend has it that he worked as a stagehand in his hometown and then failed as a merchant before moving to Rome to write plays. 130 plays are attributed to him, but take that with a grain of Roman salt. A lot of writers tried to pass their plays off as his. A 1st century BCE scholar determined that 20 plays are definitely his, and get this, all 20 survive. More or less. It's fine. I'll take it. Plautus's plays are rambunctious comedies about middle-class people and their slaves. You could even call them musicals because from the meter they're written in, we know that at least half of each play was sung. He was a big influence on medieval and Renaissance writers. Molière was a fan, and we'll see that Shakespeare borrowed most of the comedy of errors from him. People love Plautus because his plays are energetic and uproarious with puns galore and tip-top alliterations that are tricky to translate. Plautus's works are a lot like real life, with more prostitutes and twins and songs, which is to say, I guess, that they're not like real life at all, but they are a hoot. When he died in 184 BCE, he apparently wrote his own epitaph. After Plautus died, comedy mourns. The stage is deserted, and then laughter, mirth, and jest all wept in company. Okay, now tell us how you really feel about yourself. Yeesh. The other major comic playwright was Publius Terentius Afer, aka Terence, who's possibly the first playwright of color. Terence was born around the late 180s or early 190s BCE in Africa at Carthage, in a spot that's now a Tunisian suburb. He was a slave owned by a Roman senator who educated him and then freed him. He came to Rome to try to break into the theater by surprising a famous poet at his house. The poet was not thrilled, but then Terence began to read his play, and suddenly the poet was totally into it. Don't take too many lessons from this, though. I didn't get this job by showing up on Stan's doorstep with a stack of things to explain. It's not a great plan. Terence wrote 6 plays, which borrowed heavily from Menander. Cicero even called him a pint-sized Menander. After the 6th, he decided that he needed to travel more to write better plays, so at the age of 25, he left Athens and died at sea. His style is more sophisticated than Plautus's. The comedy is a little less rowdy, but the ironies are deeper. The characters are saner, the meter is more regular, and the constructions are sturdier. Fewer plot holes, fewer dirty jokes, some really elegant Latin. And the women aren't treated that badly, so that's nice. These are classier plays, but they're maybe not as funny. And hey, one more difference. In Plautus and Menander, the prologue basically tells you what's going to happen. Terence doesn't do that. He creates suspense. To take a closer look at Roman comedy, we're going to check out one of Plautus's plays, The Menachmi, or The Menachmus Twins, which we selected because Shakespeare borrowed most of it for the Comedy of Errors. The Menachmi begins with a prologue addressed directly to the audience. An actor comes out and tells everyone, hey, listen up, this is Plautus. You love Plautus. Give it up. Give it up for our man Plautus. The prologue tells us that once there was a merchant from Syracuse who had identical twin sons. He took one of those sons to Epidamnus, where the son was kidnapped, and the merchant died of a broken heart. Both boys eventually end up being called Menachmus, which is a little weird, but hey, you do you. For simplicity, we're going to call them M in the thought bubble. Years after their poorly fated trip, Syracuse M comes to Epidamnus searching for his brother, Epidamnus M. Epidamnus M is infatuated with a prostitute, Erotium, a name that basically means sexy. He keeps giving her all of his wife's stuff, which, understandably, makes his wife mad. Epidamnus M and his parasite servant go to visit Erotium. He gives her one of his wife's dresses and tells her to prepare a feast. And then he goes away. Syracuse M comes in, gets mistaken for Epidamnus M, and gets to eat Erotium's feast. And he's all, this place is rad. But somehow it never occurs to him that maybe he's been mistaken for the identical twin brother he's been searching for 6 years. Yeah, there are some plot holes. After the feast, Erotium gives Syracuse M the dress and tells him to take it to the tailor. Meanwhile, Epidamnus M's wife is like, why do you keep giving all of my dresses to your prostitute? So he tries to get it back from Erotium, and she's like, dude, I just gave it to you. Then his wife sees Syracuse M and mistakes him for her husband. He doesn't recognize her, so she tries to have him arrested for craziness and maybe dress stealing. Just then, Epidamnus M enters, and the two identical brothers see each other, but it still doesn't occur to Syracuse M that this is the brother he's been looking for. Luckily, the smart servant figures it out. The brothers are reunited, and Epidamnus M decides to auction off all of his stuff, including his wife, so he can return with his brother to Syracuse. Thanks, Thought Bubble. So yeah, it's absurd, sexist, heavily reliant on stock characters and stock situations, but still funny. Not all of Roman drama is quite so hilarious, though. Take the work of Seneca the Younger. Please. Haha, just a little comedy for you there. Seneca Jr. is born Lucius Annaeus Seneca in what is modern-day Cordoba, Spain in 4 BCE. That's just a little while after Horace publishes the Ars Poetica, the first major work since Aristotle's Poetics to tell people what plays should be. Seneca's dad was a big deal rhetorician, and when he was young, he was moved to Rome to study Stoic philosophy because there's nothing the kids like more than Stoicism. He came to adulthood during a pretty volatile time in Roman history. Little Seneca, who grew up to be another big deal rhetoric guy, kept running afoul of emperors, which was easy to do because a lot of them were dangerous psychopaths. Caligula almost executed Seneca, then Claudius banished Seneca on the grounds of adultery. Claudius's wife called him back and installed him as a tutor for Nero, who became emperor, and kept Seneca on as a counselor. But then Nero went a little crazy, and even though Seneca was retired, Nero blamed him for taking part in a conspiracy and ordered him to kill himself. So Seneca did. Man, Stoics. Ew. When Seneca wasn't being threatened by emperors, he sometimes wrote plays, which are mostly revisions of classic Greek works, and they're all tragedies. One possible exception is his Apocalypsentosis, a satire about the Emperor Claudius that no one really likes and which maybe he didn't even write. In general, Roman tragedies based on Greek subjects are known as fabulae crepidatae, and there were lots, 300 years worth, but basically Seneca's are the only ones that survive. Seneca's tragedies are notable because they're the first to favor the 5-act structure that Shakespeare would adopt. They have a different relationship to the divine, with a lot less confidence that the gods are going to help everything work out, which is to say they're pretty dark. It makes sense when you remember all of the scary, violent emperors who were ruling Rome during Seneca's time. Nero was as merciless and arbitrary as even the most capricious god. And remember all that stuff the Greeks liked to keep off stage? Like, say, really extreme and incredibly gory violence? That's just the kind of thing Seneca wants to show. Because atrocities, especially those perpetrated on the weak by the powerful, were facts of life in his society. And also a regular feature in violent entertainments like gladiator fights. So if you've ever thought, hey, I'd really like to see Oedipus blind himself, and maybe he could actually tear out both of his eyeballs, man, I have got a play for you. But not you. You don't have eyes. Because of scenes like that one, and the fact that Seneca was a high-class kind of person, there's been a lot of debate about whether his plays were actually performed, or whether they were closet dramas meant to be read rather than produced. Certainly some of the scenes, like the cannibal meal in Thyestes, would have required special effects, but let's not put some creepy props or even extreme violence beyond the limits of the Roman stage. Remember, these are the people who thought that a group of dwarves beating a woman with spiked clubs was just normal entertainment. Check us out next time for a survey of ancient Sanskrit theater.
Okay, so that's sort of just a brief recap. I like this one because it gives you, like a visual to sort of like, put together with what we talked about, right? Okay. So I'm going to give you an assignment now, and I've got some groups for you. Now, some of the people aren't here, so we're going to have to reach out to them so that you can tell them what you want them to do, because you're here, so you get to decide, okay? So here's what you're going to do. I'm going to divide you in 3 groups. One of you is going to get Plautus. One of you is going to get Terence. And one of you is going to get Seneca. And your assignment is going to create an outline of the playwright's life and works and choose one play to give a synopsis. Now, you're going to have a few people in your group, so you can divide this work, right? Maybe 2 of you work on their life, maybe 2 of you work on the timeline of what they wrote, and 2 of you work on a play together, okay? Does this make sense? It's gonna be due the next time that we meet, so you've got some time to work on it. So you're not gonna have to present these until Tuesday, and I'm gonna give you a little time on Tuesday to make sure that everything looks good before you present it, okay? So we're talking about maybe like 10, 15-minute presentation. It doesn't have to go super in depth. Questions? Yes,
Is
Tor.
this like a group project, or is it like
It's a group project.
individual?
Yep, it's a group project, okay?
Okay.
So that way you don't have to do it all yourself, all right? So let me divide you into groups so that you have a little bit of time to talk about who wants to do what, and then I will tell you who you have that isn't here today so that you can reach out to them, or I'll send out like a message. So let's see, because we are missing quite a few people today, but that's how it goes. Breakout
How many
room.
people are gonna be in each group?
It's like 7 or so.
Okay.
Okay, so let me assign, I've got the list here that I made up. I tried to divide it by like the people we haven't seen in a while, or like there's a couple in each group, so that if they don't show up, then It's not like they're all together, okay? So there's 1, 2. And then I'll come in and tell you who else you've got so that you know who else to talk to. Okay, so there's that one. And you can tell them like, hey, we want you guys to do this, okay? And if they don't do it, then you let me know, because you're not, if you've assigned it to them, you know, you're not responsible. I would just make sure that you get everything covered at least a little bit, right? Where's Haley? Okay. Who am I missing here? Oh, Alejandro. And so I'm going to move her to here. Okay, so actually today you're going to have 5 in each room, all right? So if you get breakout room number 1, you're doing Plautus. 2, you're doing Terrence, and 3, you're doing Seneca, and I'll remind you of that, okay? So here you go. All right. Okay. Hi guys. Okay, so you guys have Plautus, okay? And then your whole group, I'm going to post it here. So you're missing 3 people. Yeah, you're missing 3 people. Okay, so there's your whole group. Can you see that in the chat? So like I said, I'm trying to divide the people that we don't see very often. So that way, if they don't show up to present, then nobody's like got a bunch of them. But Cash is usually here. He's just not here today. So reach out to them and let them know. And I think I can send like a group message so that you can get their emails. Or you should be able to message them on Schoology. Questions? We got it? Okay. All right. I'm going to go to group 2. Hey guys. So y'all have Terrence, okay? And let me give you your group members, and I'm going to put that in the chat. So you can message the people who aren't here and let them know what you want them to do, okay? So you've got 3 people who are missing. Brantavion was here earlier, so I don't know what happened. Maybe his internet. Any questions? No?
Is that
What exactly are we supposed to do?
Okay, so you need to divide up. You're going to make a timeline of their life. So give us a little bit information about their life, right? You need to tell us what they wrote, and then pick one play, and 2 of you can divide it and give us a synopsis of the play. Okay? So tell us what the play is, like the initiating event, the stasis, all that fun stuff. So it might be good to divide one in half, and one of you takes the first half and one of you takes the second half maybe, or the 2 of you can work together on that, okay? So maybe 2 of you work together on their life, 2 of you work together on their works, or maybe one of you, your job is to like make a nice looking PowerPoint, however you want to divide it. Okay? Make sense? Yeah? Okay. All right. I'll be back if you have questions. Hey, everybody. So you guys have Seneca. All right. And I'm going to give you the list of the people who are in your group so that you can contact the people who aren't here today to let them know what you want them to do. Okay. So here's your whole group list. Easton, can you tell me what you mean? Okay, so what I want you to do is decide who's going to do what. Some of you are going to, maybe two of you say, okay, we're going to work on making a timeline of their life. Two of you will make a list of their works, right? And when they did them. And then two of you might take a play and work together to make a synopsis. You get to decide. I'm not telling you who's the leader. You guys decide. It's a democracy. Okay? So like, you know, who like when was it written, right? Or if you probably won't find anything about performance this far back, right? Well, you guys have got to figure it out, okay? The synopsis is going to be the biggest one, or maybe one of you is like, hey, I'm really good at PowerPoint. I want to put all this into a nice looking PowerPoint, okay? So you guys decide. Okay, so make sure everything's covered.
What are the options again? You're muted.
It's in the PowerPoint if you want to go to the PowerPoint for today, but it's timeline. Actually, I need to edit the PowerPoint for today. It's timeline. Actually, I thought I typed up a thing for this. Timeline, works, and then a brief synopsis of one of the plays.
Okay, thank you.
You are welcome.
We have a question. You're muted. She's muted.
Yes. What's your question?
We don't know what to put it on. Like, do we like put it on a Google Slides or something? Or
Yes.
do we...
Yep. I put a little thing, a little typed up thing in in today's document, so that you can look at that describes what to do. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And then you're going to have time to work on it a little bit the next time we meet as well. All right.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nah, not really.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I will see you next time. Email me if you have questions. If you want to make like a Google, if you want to make like a Google thing and add me to it, you can do that too. You want the list of people in your group, Navi? Okay, sure. There you go. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye-bye.